So what does the future hold for my Melanochrysums? Hi guys, welcome to my channel. My name's Kirsten and today I want to talk about some Philodendron Melanochrysum updates. I've kind of got it at 3 stages of life at the moment, so I kind of wanted to talk about those updates in relation to how they differ for the different stages of life of a Melanochrysum. So when I talk about life stages, I am pretty much talking about, for instance, this, cuttings, baby propagations, this one on this side, which is quite a juvenile specimen, and then this one on this side, although it's also here, which is actually quite a mature specimen to find in a kind of home environment. There would be a 4th stage of life, which maybe would perhaps be somebody who had a conservatory that was extremely humid, or, you know, botanical gardens or something where you just see those ginormous ones. But I don't think most of us have the ability to grow them to that sort of stage, but this is, you know, pretty epic here. So I'm actually really happy with what I've got. I wouldn't have space for, you know, these 5-foot leaves. That's not the stage I'm talking about today. I'm talking about the ones that we encounter. So in my last video about this plant, I had actually, well, it's got loads more leaves since then for a start off, but I had actually knocked off a lot of the leaves on this stem just by being super duper clumsy, and in addition there was a leaf tearing humidity issue, which we'll get to in a minute, and essentially because it was looking kind of weird and leggy and the leaves were getting smaller, I decided to chop it right back to here. You can't see because of this leaf, to here, and yeah, just let it sort of grow again. And from that I took these propagations, which you can see are doing marvellously. So when I chopped it up, there were 3 leaf propagations, and there were also 2 stem propagations, so like a wet stick, a leafless node, if you will. So if you'd sort of find there, that would be the node, and that sort of has a leaf coming out of it, but it didn't have anything there. So what I did was I chopped those up and I decided to experiment, and I put one in water and one in my classic sort of sphagnum moss prop box, and both of them rotted. I don't really know why they rotted. I didn't do anything different. I had chopped them up and I had let them callus over, and so both of them were calloused over before they went in, but they both still rotted, and so that was it. So the water propagation of the leaves seemed to have done absolutely excellently, and if you can see all the roots in there, it's looking pretty good, isn't it? So it took a while to start doing anything at all, but once it got going, it just kind of continued to, you know, put out lots of stuff. Then some new growth points came and the leaves on this have sized up. This one's given me 2, this one here has given me 1, and this one here has given me its first one there. Isn't it nice how like pale pink they come out? I love the Melanochrysum. So pretty. You wouldn't think it was gonna like fade to this really dark black greeny colour when it starts off so sort of shell pink. With regards to this though, I am pretty lazy. I don't really clean the water that often. I know that's rubbish. I probably change it every 3 weeks, and I just top it up if I see it's sort of like evaporating too low. But I have now started doing it twice weekly because it's evaporating so fast because of the heat that we're experiencing. But yeah, I will do it more often. Nonetheless, they seem to be doing really, really well. So the first point of difference I would say between the 3 stages is in the humidity. That's where it's sort of most dramatic. So the smaller the plant, the more babying it needs, which is sort of true of every plant in existence anyway. But, you know, obviously the Melanochrysum has certain traits that need to be taken care of. It's a rainforest plant and it lives in very specific areas naturally. I said in my last video that I didn't really give it that much humidity, and that continues to be true. It was usually around 50% humidity, sometimes went as low as 30% humidity, and it had sort of, you know, been through the end of summer, autumn, winter period, so it wasn't that hot. And a couple of people told me that you have to have it much, much higher, and that's probably true. But to be fair, I don't really use the humidifier that often. I'm sure it would like it much more. My ambient humidity in my home still is 50% generally. I live in the UK, so when it rains, it obviously goes up. That's true always in the world, but it hasn't really rained as much as it usually does in the UK. So when it rains, it's usually about 70% humidity in my home. But because it's been so hot recently, the humidity has been kind of going down to an ambient of 30 with heat, which is essentially a desert environment. So with that in mind, I have used the humidifier more, but I will say that it still probably never really gets above 55. This smaller one here and the larger one are in the same heavy pot, so they are getting exactly the same treatment and they are managing in their own different ways. With the propagations, I really haven't had any problems with humidity, but it is being water propagated and that's evaporating and it's been extremely hot. So I'm fairly certain that the ambient humidity around these particular cuttings is, you know, decently high. I mean, not 70%, but it's going to be, you know, decently high. There's been no problems. They all come out of their sheaths really easily and it's all wonderful. But where I have found that the humidity does make a difference is on the growth points, and that's where we look at the different stages of life. So when this plant is still juvenile and young, the new growth points, the new leaves, come out of what's called a petiolar sheath. And in low humidity, sometimes it has troubles coming out of this. And when you get kind of like that Cinderella slipper effect, where the leaf is trying to sort of like grow out and it's getting stuck in there. And that's obviously really bad. You can damage the leaf on the way out. So I deal with this personally I just get a Q-tip that is dipped in water and I put that all over it once a day in the morning. And eventually when the leaf is sort of like looking more ready to come out but still can't get out of that corset, I give it a helping hand with a wet Q-tip to stop that Cinderella slipper effect. Now this is like delicate work, so you have to be very careful not to damage the leaf. And you know, I have damaged the leaves doing it. Can you see that? But they still look pretty good. The damage is minimal, and I would argue that they look much worse in the wild with much more damage from the elements. I know I could put the humidifier on more, but I don't want mould on my walls. Like, you know, this is my home. If I had a conservatory or a greenhouse or something, that would be different, obviously, but that's not the case. That's how I'm dealing with the leaves coming out. Now, one of the signs of a Melanochrysum reaching maturity is actually when it stops giving the leaves from a petiolar sheath and it starts giving it from a individual cataphyll, which you can see here. So that is going to be a new leaf. Now, this has skipped a node, and that's a light issue, so we'll talk about that a little bit later. But essentially, yeah, that's going to be the new one and it will give me a new leaf. That's got a lot of growing to do yet before it opens up. It is much slower, and I will say once it's coming out of a cataphyll, it doesn't need a helping hand. It doesn't have any problems coming out of the cataphyll and, you know, creating a new leaf, which is awesome. But during leaf development, whilst it's sort of like trying to expand and harden off, I would imagine, and I don't know this, but I think it's only common sense really, isn't it? I would imagine that more humidity would make it easier to expand and grow. And so I will say that I possibly could have larger leaves than I have, but they are pretty big. Let's be fair, they're pretty big. I'm happy with that. If they started getting much smaller, I'd be a bit concerned, but really this is absolutely fine for me. And I think it looks really good. The propagations really don't have as much difficulty. As you can see, there's never a problem coming out of the petiolar sheath, and they've been pretty easy. I will say that because the water propagations have been doing a lot better and don't have such trouble coming out of their sheaths and everything, and I think that's because the water's evaporating and creating a humid atmosphere. So because they do better, I would say if you are propagating in the summer like this when it's really hot, then water propagation is probably the way to go because of that. So the updates I have on the light and how that sort of differs for all of them are, well, I suppose it's kind of the two stages in this sense. So these plants in this pot have been getting excellent bright indirect light. Apart from just at the beginning of growing season where it just got going, I had it in this spot where the morning light hit it, but as the seasons changed and the sun heated up, it became, you know, much worse for the plant. And essentially this happened to a new leaf coming out. You know, that's barely a leaf there. I mean, luckily it's given me this now, but yeah, basically it got completely torn and burnt and it was awful. So I did move it, but it was still getting absolutely brilliant light until about a month ago. So I had to move it into this office and I didn't have a proper lighting rig or anything for ages. And at that point, kind of everything slowed down. I have had this new leaf since then, but that was like born in, and that had sized up from the last one, which had sized up from the last one, etc. But it was kind of made in the perfectly bright indirect light that it had before. But the larger one looked like it was going to give me a leaf, and then it just went and skipped a node, which is really irritating. Like this here was supposed to be a leaf and then it just the other day did this, and I'm kind of sad about that. I do have a lighting rig now. I'm hoping that's going to be enough light for the leaves to continue either giving me the same size leaves or sizing up, you know, that would be ideal. So definitely with this plant, both the more mature one and the more juvenile one, the more light you give it, the better. It loves it. It loves the light, but it just can't touch the leaves. It's just not worth risking it. Don't do what I did. Don't think, oh, it's like morning sun, it will be fine, because the seasons change, okay? It doesn't stay like that forever. It doesn't pass over it quickly forever. And especially if you've got like a big plant, takes ages. It's not good at all. These have only actually had very good light for the last month. They had started to grow before this little leaf came out, while it was in quite dark light, to be fair. You know, when you're propagating, you're trying to get roots and everything, having the best light is not essential, I would argue. But, you know, obviously some light. Now I'm keeping it on my plant shelf with grow light on it, and that seems to be, you know, doing fine. But it's only had that for about, I don't know, is it even a month? Maybe not, maybe like 3 weeks. I wasn't really going to touch on watering because that's sort of in my last care video. But I will say, I guess, for the updates of how I've been handling the really long heat wave that we've had, it's in a really large terracotta pot and it's in really chunky, well-draining soil as well. And so what I do is I water it all the way through, completely saturate it, and I make sure that actually quite a bit of water is in the dish as well. And because it's terracotta and it's wicking it up and there's evaporation through it, because it's so well draining, that seems to be kind of perfectly keeping it alive. And I still need to go back midweek and give it a little bit of a sip as well, just to keep it going in this particular heat. However, if you have a plastic pot and maybe not such well-draining soil, I would say that would be a one-way ticket to root rot. So that's just how I've been handling it in this really big terracotta pot. But it's a very specific circumstance. Obviously, my propagations have been, you know, well watered. I have continued to fertilise with liquid gold leaf, which is the absolute tits. I think it is so good. I have never tried such a good fertiliser, so it seems to be really happy. It's a lovely organic feed that's even got soluble calcium in it as well, which is quite difficult to find, especially in an organic feed, without it being like super duper expensive. So it's really good, and I think that they ship worldwide, but I don't know how much that would cost with like importing and, you know, all of that. But if you can get hold of liquid gold leaf in your country, I would strongly recommend it. It is such a good fertiliser. Oh, with regard to pest updates, I found loads of webbing kind of out of the blue on this. It was really weird. It was like that thin veil webbing that you only get from spider mites that's really creepy. Yeah, I found that all over it, and it kind of almost seemed to happen overnight, which, you know, obviously it couldn't have, but I am quite careful at watching this one, so I was very surprised to see it. I was even more surprised to see so much webbing and yet not a bit of damage. The alocasia that it was next to has, you know, been munched, but this one didn't seem to have any damage at all. So I cleaned it off. I got some predatory mites and they just went to town and chowed down on the spider mites, and that seemed to deal with it. I am very pro predatory mites, however it is quite expensive, so I've started to try and use different kinds of pest control, like SB Invigorator, that's a natural physical pest control, and things like that, but those are really much more preventative. But the mites did work. I got them from Dragonfly, which I'll link down below. They are very good. There's loads of things there. So what does the future hold for my Melanochrysum? So these two main plants, I'm going to keep them together. I think they look really, really good. It's actually reached the top of the plank at the moment. I'm going to extend the plank and grow it further up. I would like to grow it to the ceiling. That would be my goal. I would love that. Now this larger one with the skip node, I am not sure what I'm going to do with that. If it carries on skipping nodes, or if the leaves start to get smaller or something like that, I'll probably chop it back again and try and pump up the light. I wouldn't chop it back again now until the beginning of next growing season, because we are approaching the end of the growing season, and it's sort of setting it up for a failure, isn't it, to just try to expect it to like pump out really good leaves from a new growth point in the winter. I'll leave decisions on that until then, but it depends on what it does as to whether I'll just leave it. I mean, I can cope with one skip node, you know, that's not going to bother me at all. But with regard to these cuttings, I was thinking I would do a giveaway. I've got 3 propagations here, they're doing really well, and I thought I would do a channel giveaway. I kind of want to get them started a little bit more, so there's like a couple of leaves for each one of them. This is only just getting its first one, for instance, so I want to make sure that they're all like definitely viable, and then I'll do a giveaway, and I will keep propagating them like in water. Oh yeah, I forgot to say, I do put just a little bit of fertilizer in the water as well, and it hasn't seemed to give me algae yet, which is brilliant. So, you know, they are getting a bit of fertilizer, but I will do a giveaway, and when I ship them, I will ship them bare root as well, so they're not going to get potted up. If that's like something people want, then I'll do it. That's what the future holds for these propagations. They will be given away to subscribers. So that's it for my update on the 3 stages of life of a Melanochrysum. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and leave a comment. I really, really, really like hearing from you guys, so yeah, leave a comment, it makes my day. And if you want to see more videos from me, please subscribe to this channel and have a great day. Cheerio.